I didn't set out to be anybody's headline that night. I was just a man in a soaked suit on Lakehurst Boulevard, migraine pounding, replaying a boardroom full of kids calling me out of touch like I wasn't in the room. Then I saw her. A tiny figure in a ripped pink jacket sprinting through the crosswalk. And behind her, 3 men moving too smooth to be random trouble. The kind of smooth you only get by practicing bad things. So I hit the brakes, door flew open, and I yelled, "Get in the car," and this little girl looked at me for half a heartbeat. Did the math only scared kids know how to do, and dove across the passenger seat, while the tallest one said, "Walk away, old man," which I've been hearing since I was a broke kid with duct-taped sneakers, and I didn't. Then I stepped into him elbow, first knocked his jaw off. Its hinges got grabbed by number 2, drove him into a newspaper box, till it spit out last week's lies. Then number 3 caught me from behind. My head kissed the curb blade flashed in the rain, small but honest, and the girl screamed, "Please don't hurt him," which snapped on the whole block. Lights, windows, phones, and those men read the neighborhood like a clock and vanished. The knife man had a shark biting through a chain tattooed over his fingers. "I tasted blood," told her aunt. "Your fault, kid. What's your name?" And she touched the metal stars on her bracelet like a little map letters that spelled M-I-A, Mia. Yeah, that happened. We tried the police station, and she wouldn't get out. Wouldn't look at the door, just shook and whispered, "Don't let them send me back where she didn't say." And I stood in the rain, feeling the weight of my last name and the headlines it could buy. And I thought about the boy I used to be, the one folks laughed at for believing a zip code wasn't fate, so I slid behind the wheel and said one night, "Only one, my place warm. Then we figure it out together." And she nodded without lifting her eyes. And that one night turned into a vow the second I saw her sit cross-legged on my guest room rug with a little wooden box like it was an organ. She opened it. A Polaroid of her and a woman with soft eyes. A folded note she wouldn't let me read, a spare star from her bracelet. And she whispered, "Mom, Serena." They took her, then she folded herself around that box like the storm could find her through walls. And I walked into my kitchen and called a number I swore I was done with. "Riley Soto, ex-Intel, more ghosts than friends. I said I need you to find someone and start last night." And by morning she was at my island, with a folder that tasted like pennies. When I read it, Duke Moreno shark and chain tattoo across the knuckles, a long record. No convictions, muscle for a syndicate that launders people through fake rehab and halfway houses out of North Harbor, and the woman in the Polaroid. Serena Brooks' 32 neighbors heard a fight 3 weeks ago. Nobody filed anything. Nobody looked. You know what I mean? The kind of silence that pays salaries. I called another ghost, Tanner Reese, the former FBI lead who quit when the paperwork felt like permission. He answered with, "You still a pain," and I told him yes, and texted an address. He showed up with duffels and a look that said he'd already forgiven me, Dottie. My housekeeper kept Mia in the study, with cartoons too loud and Coco too sweet, and Tanner launched a micro-drone through a cracked vent at a warehouse Riley's source whispered about the feed. Came in gray and stuttering, and showed rows of cots behind hanging sheets, faces that turned away on instinct, new bruises laid over old ones. And in the far corner, a woman on a thin mattress with her arm bound in a torn t-shirt. Tanner zoomed and I recognized Serena's eyes before the pixels settled. We had timestamps and a floor plan. And then our luck ran out, flashlight in the vent, radio. Bark footsteps, the feed died. Somebody yelled in the alley, "Hey, you two!" And we ran. And then we waited, which will melt a man faster than fire if he lets it. Riley made an encrypted drop to a bureau contact Tanner trusted, And that afternoon, an agent knocked on my door in plain clothes, Harper, Quinn steady like bedrock. She watched the footage and said, "I can push for an emergency warrant, but I need a brief statement from the child and a guardian's signature," which made my stomach go tight, because I wasn't her guardian, not on paper. And Harper slid the form to me and said for now, and I signed. And Mia whispered to a social worker with both hands on her box. He had a shark on his hand and traced the teeth across her own knuckles. The judge signed at dawn, and we rode in the second SUV because Harper said I couldn't be in the first, and Tanner said I couldn't be left behind, doors. Broke voices ricocheted. I stood in a hallway, trying not to break every rule we'd just agreed to. A medic called for a stretcher, and Serena blinked at the light and said, "Mia and I said safe, not eloquent." True enough. 12 women came out alive. Duke didn't, he wasn't there. Quiet lasted a week, which is long and short. At the same time we did doctors and oatmeal and the kind of thin laughter that takes off, running. If you stare too hard, Mia slept without shoes for the first time. Serena stopped flinching at the microwave beep. We lit a candle just to watch a flame that didn't hurt us. And then the service elevator hummed at 2:13 a.m. And a man stepped into my hallway like he owned the lease. He shut the door behind him, soft, and said, "Sweetheart," and the study clicked and I moved. It wasn't Duke, it was his enforcer, Cade Nolan, ex-military eyes like lake glass. He looked at me and grinned, "You again." "You hit like an old man. Try me," I said, and before he could. Agent Quinn rounded the corner, gun low and steady. He flicked his eyes toward the bedrooms, and I stepped to block, and he chose me. Which tells you something about how men like that count. We went through a console table like a bad magic trick, and when he reached toward whatever wasn't there, Harper fired once, clean, 1 inch left. And this is a different story, yeah. That happened. We got breath back in the house. It wasn't peace, but it was air. Then Riley came with a folder that burned Silas Moreno Duke's older brother, the accountant of evil shell companies, wellness clinics in the desert that smell like bleach and charity. At the same time, a woman named Teresa Valdez had run from one and called the fake hotline Tanner'd wired into our phones. We met her behind a shuttered gas station. She shook so hard she spilled coffee. And when Tanner said Silas's alias out loud, she slid a hard drive across the table like it might bite names. Ledgers, transport logs, videos. I stopped her there, because there are things you can't unsee. "You're safe now," I told her. And she said no, but I can be brave. And that tells you who actually saves who in stories like this. Harper flew Teresa to D.C. to hand the drive to a federal prosecutor who hates cameras more than I do. And we waited again, cameras on every hinge guard shifts doubled. Then a black SUV with plates too clean parked 2 blocks down. Then an envelope in block caps. "You should have stayed out of it." Then a brown paper package with the neon hair tie. Mia lost the night I met her wrapped around a pink bear that wasn't ours. So we moved Serena and Mia to a safe house. Tanner turned my floor into a decoy funhouse, and at 2:06 a.m., on the 4th night, a heat signature slid the roof hatch like a rumor. He moved like he had blueprints. He had the old ones, we'd drawn new. He took the bait, opened the dead-end door. Tanner was waiting with the voice that ends careers, don't he said. The man lunged 1 shot to the leg down. He went unfinished, shark teeth tattoo on the wrist, Michael Gantz, because there's always one more name. Harper oversaw the extraction, and my phone buzzed an hour later. Indictments signed 6 states, Silas in cuffs, clinics raided survivors out. Accounts frozen, Teresa says. Thank you for believing her before she could believe herself. I sat at the kitchen table and let that sentence be the air. Somewhere between threats and relief, I filed to adopt Mia, asked Serena first. Because love without respect, as theater told her, I wasn't replacing anything that can't be replaced, just making permanent what we were choosing each morning, that I'd show up not as a sponsor or a savior, but as a father. And the judge asked Mia why, and she swung her feet and said, because he came back, which is the kind of sentence that fixes a man faster than therapy ever could. You know what I mean? And life kept being life headlines. Think pieces about billionaires and optics, people saying hero and hypocrite with the same mouth, but second light. Serena named it that because first light sounds like a yacht word, had more volunteers than we could train, and lines of women who weren't asking for pity, just a place to start again. Dottie started making grilled cheese for entire support groups, like the world is one kitchen too small. Tanner kept pretending he hates everyone and showing up for birthdays with gifts that require batteries and supervision. Harper taught Mia to plant rosemary in our tiny greenhouse, and Mia sniffed her hands and said it smells like something that doesn't give up. And I think about that a lot. Not every bow ties. Silas will drink courtrooms for breakfast. Some cases will drag, some won't. Some nights Mia falls asleep painting suns and runs across the balcony yelling, "Race me!" And that is what winning sounds like. Other nights she leaves her shoes by the bed again, and I sit in the dark outside her door because protection is sometimes a posture, not a press release. And a week ago, another letter came in, those polite block caps. Stay out of what you don't understand. I folded it and put it in Mia's wooden box with the Polaroid and the star and the hospital bracelet with her new last name. And if the point was fear, what they mailed me was fuel, because wealth didn't answer the questions that mattered. It just turned up the volume on the worst ones. The answer came from a kid in a ripped pink jacket who looked at me and silently asked if I'd come back. And I decided, then proved it, street by street, hallway by hallway, courtroom by courtroom. So tell me, and be honest, because the comments is where truth actually shows up on the internet. What would you have done on Lakehurst if you'd seen a little girl in the rain with 3 men behind her? Does money make people brave or just louder, who gets believed first? Where you live, suits, uniforms, or the ones who ran? And what should justice look like beyond a courtroom stamp? Drop your take, argue with me, tell me what you've seen, and if this hits somewhere tender, share it with someone who needs to remember we don't have to be the worst label we ever got. And if you want more stories that push back on the neat boxes, hit subscribe and stay. I think you'll find you're not alone.